Hi there, and welcome to my second video on the Radtel RT860. This radio here. VHF UHF dual bander with HF receive facility including SSB. First I'm going to show you some basic navigation of this radio because obviously it was primarily designed as a VHF UHF handio. We're going to navigate this on the HF bands. I'll show you how I found the best way to use it, certainly initially when I got it out of the box. There are ways of slightly improving the operator, the user interface using the programming software. So after I show you the basic navigation, we'll look at the programming software, but particularly in relation to the HF receive side of the radio. Because the VHF UHF side, well, the program is pretty much like any other dual band handy that you will find. So no surprises there. But there's a few little things you can do just to improve the ease of use on HF. Okay. Have a look at it, see what you think. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you what I think. I've still got a little bit to do on this radio. I haven't got many memories programmed in VHF UHF. So we'll look at that in a later video, and I'll do a little roundup of what I think of it overall. But this video is about the HF receive side. So let's have a look at how we can navigate the radio. I'll show you the basic navigation first, and then we'll look at the programming software, because you can make life easier for yourself if you go in and program your radio, and I'll show you how. But just firstly, when we turn the radio on, okay, we've got the screen there. I'll just zoom in a little on the screen. It defaults to VHF UHF, the standard handheld mode. If you want to engage the HF side of the radio, on the side of the radio here, we've got a PTT, and then we've got two user definable keys. You can either program that one as a secondary PTT or any other function really, as we'll see later in the software. And similarly, we've got a programmable key here at the bottom. As my radio came from the supplier, it was this bottom key that was programmed to start the HF radio side. So I'll just turn the radio back around so you can see the display. I've changed my programming slightly, but I'll press the side key and you'll see now we've got radio starting. Just knocked the volume down because of the noise. Now we're on the HF side of the radio, okay? Now, navigating the HF radio, we're going to be using, primarily we're going to be using four keys. The up and down arrow keys, the star key here, and the hash key. All right, so I'll bring the radio a little bit closer again so we can see the display, and I'll see if I can turn the backlight on. There we go. Now you should see that the cursor at the moment, we've got a little arrow against the frequency readout. That means we're in frequency mode, and we can step up and down using the up and down keys. We can step up and down in frequency. If we press the star key here, you can now see that this little symbol here, the 001, is highlighted. That's a zone. Now we'll come to zones when I show you the programming software. If you set up zones, it's going to make it a lot easier to navigate on this radio. This radio is currently in zone 1. We'll leave it there for now because I want to move the cursor on again. I'll press the star key. Okay, so each time I'm moving, I'm pressing the star key there. And I press the star key, and you'll now see the step is highlighted. We're in 1K steps. We can up that. Now we're in 5. Now we're in 10. Let's go to 5. Let's press the star key again. We can change the bandwidth up and down using the keys. Star key again. And we've got the low noise amplifier setting. I've got it set to AGC at the moment, but you can vary that again by pressing the up and down keys. I'll put it back at AGC. In the same way, if we're in single sideband and we want to move the BFO because the frequency is slightly off, we press the star key again. We've got BFO highlighted, and then using the key we can step up and down. Okay, so I'll put that back at 0. Oh, I just overshot, I put that back at 0. Now then, you'll see from the display we're in lower sideband mode. That's fine, we're on 80 meters, so that would be fine. But what if I want to listen to a AM broadcast frequency on shortwave? Let's put a 49 meter band frequency in. Now to change frequency, okay, I'm going to need the star key again because I need to move this cursor over to where it says LSB SW. I need to move the cursor, so let's press it again. Now we've got the little arrow against the frequency display. Now I can key in a frequency using the keypad. I'm going to just do 6030 in the 49 meter band. There it is. We're on that frequency. How do we change mode? This is where it gets a little bit clunky, really, in my opinion. We're in sideband mode. I'm going to use the hash key now. Okay, so I'm going to be pressing the hash key here. So I press the hash key. Short press on the hash key takes me to upper sideband. And a short press again takes me to CW mode. Right, so where's AM? Well, let's press the hash key again. We're back in lower sideband. I'm going to give a long press on the hash key. Radio says it's resetting. Now I'm in medium wave band in AM mode, as you can see. What happens if I press the hash key again now? Short press. Reset. Okay, now I'm in lower sideband mode. Let's give another long press on the hash key. I'm in long wave now. AM mode. Another long press on the hash key. I'm in FM band 2, broadcast FM for my local radio stations. Another long press on the hash key. And I'm now on shortwave in AM mode. Now, there's a slightly easier way of doing this. It involves using the programming software and setting up your zones. I will show you that. Now I'm in shortwave. Okay, I can navigate as usual with my up and down keys, or I can put a frequency, whatever frequency I want there, in the keypad. We've got 19 meters, for example. And there we are. Similarly, again, using the star key here. Okay, if I press the star key, I move to zones, I move to step, and we don't want to be on 100k steps really on shortwave like that, so we take the step down to 5k. Okay, but before we can move frequency, we need to make sure that cursor goes back to the frequency display. Let's up the bandwidth as well. Let's put it to 4k. Okay, well, we're there. We leave the LNA and the BFO. We go back to the frequency readout. We've got the little arrow here. Okay, and then we can just step up and down using the hash. Using the up and down buttons rather on the front of the radio. So that is the basic navigation. Pretty much you can use that as the radio comes to you out of the box. You'll be able to navigate the bands that way. We'll now have a look at the programming software in relation to the HF side of this radio. Okay, this radio is best treated as two separate radios. You've got a standard VHF UHF handheld with quite wide band reception on the VHF UHF side, and then you've got a switchable HF radio. And by HF I mean from long wave up to 30 megahertz. Okay, but that's like a separate device within the device, and you'll see what I mean when we look at the programming software. So with the software now open, let's just take a look at the specifics that relate to the HF side of the radio and how we can set it up. So the device screen, we're not particularly interested in these. I mean, these are all applicable when we come to setting the radio up for the way we want it, particularly for use as a transceiver. But what I want to show you in this video, a couple of things really. If we go to the key tab, these are our function keys. Now, FS1 is the larger key that's beneath the PTT key, and FS2 is the smaller programmable key, the bottom one on the side of the radio. All right. Now, it doesn't really matter how you set these up, but I recommend that you assign these particular functions to one or other of the keys. And FS1 is the RX demodulation. That is the key that's going to allow us to receive SSB on the VHF, UHF part of the radio, if that makes sense. Remember, I said we need to consider this radio as two separate radios in one. We've got the VHF, UHF side, and we've got the HF side using the SI4732 chip. So RX demodulation, that's going to apply to when we're on VHF, UHF, we can switch into SSB. Now, the radio says SSB. It doesn't define upper or lower. I'm guessing it's upper sideband, but I don't know that. FS2, we've got that set to radio. That is to switch in the HF receive side of the radio. Okay, I've just happened to have assigned a long press to FS2 as a frequency detect. That's the frequency sniffing function on VHF, UHF, where you can tune to the frequency of a nearby transmitter. And you can see I've got a long press as scanning on side key, programmable side key 1. We can also use the number keys. Now, I think this refers to a long press on the number keys. We can assign various functions to these. You see, I happen to have 0 set to spectrum mode, so just leave that there. 1, we can set, what shall we have? We could have monitor, which is the which would open the squelch. Again, this is on the VHF, UHF side of the radio, so I won't dwell on these too much, but you can see there's a number of settings that we can apply to each key as shortcuts, basically. Now, remember I talked about zones and how it was easier to navigate the HF side of the radio via zones. You'll find those, oddly, not on the zone setting, which applies to the VHF, UHF side of the radio. But if we click on the FM radio tab, here we will find our zones. And I've got, 4 zones set at the moment. Let's just take a look at them. I've got the full, now remember the full HF range as quoted on the specs of this radio at 2.3 to 26.1 megahertz. So zone 1, I've got basically the shortwave spectrum, AM demodulation, and the frequency here, that's your sort of spot frequency that when you switch into that zone, that's your landing spot. That is the frequency you will land on. I happen to have set it for 15300 in the 19-meter broadcast band. You can set it wherever you like, okay? But it's a useful sort of dropping off point. I've got the default step there as 5 kilohertz. Again, you can vary that. I've got a bandwidth set at 4. You can vary that. Remember, these are just the defaults that you'll start at. You can still, as I showed you in the video, you can still alter these steps and bandwidths if you wish. The same way with the attenuation, with the BFO. I've given that particular zone a name, which will come up on the radio when we switch to that zone. You'll see the second zone. Now, that is a bit of a mistype, isn't it? Because we've got USB in medium wave. So let's drop that down. I'm going to put that into the shortwave part of the spectrum because we're in USB mode. And I'm going to alter that frequency to 14.2. So we'll put it right in the middle of 20 meters with a 1K step. We don't want 0.5K bandwidth. Let's have 2.2 kilohertz bandwidth. I'm going to call that I just can write ham as it was originally, okay, for ham bands. There we are. So I've got that. So I've now got a zone for basic shortwave listening. I've got a zone for SSB on the emitter bands. I just set that demodulation there to USB as well. I've got a zone for medium wave, and I've got a zone for long wave. Now I did find an issue with my radio. I'll write this to the radio again, but either on the medium wave or the long wave setting, it wasn't retaining that default step. I could go in and change the step once I was in there, but the zone wasn't retaining that information. We'll see if that's changed. So let's just check we're happy with these. I mean, you can have any number of zones if you want, so you can make them to suit yourself. You don't have to have long wave and medium wave in there if you don't want it. You could have a zone for each emitter band, I guess. This is just the way I set it up to make the radio a little bit easier to operate. So we've got our zones. Let's remind ourselves of our key settings. So we've got the RX demodulation, scanning, and on the small side key, the secondary side key, we've got the radio and frequency detect. I've got spectrum mode there on number key 0. We might try that. I might show you that in VHF, UHF mode in the next video. So let's go to, we've got the radio plugged in. Let's go to write. Click on write. And we'll get that information over to the radio. And then we'll just show you the radio after the event. Let's see how successful we've been with our programming then. I'm going to turn the radio on. Okay, we're in VHF, UHF mode here. Now, interestingly, you can see straight away we've got, we're on a frequency of my local repeater actually, GB3BC. Can you see we've got SSB there? I'll just bring that, hopefully the camera will focus. But we've got SSB in the bottom, okay, of the display. If I press the upper programmable side key here, it switches it to FM. And press it again. I've now got AM so on the VHF, UHF side. So those are our modes that are available. You know, we could just be as easily on a VFO frequency. I'll just, there we are. So there's 144,300. Now that would be the call-in frequency on SSB in the UK. So we can just go to AM and then cycle around to SSB, and hopefully we'd be able to receive SSB on 144,300. So that's the effect of that key. Let's start our HF radio. So I'll press the bottom, the smaller of the two side keys here. Okay, the bottom one, there it is. Press that, start the radio. A lot of interference there, let's turn that down. So we're now in, which zone are we in? We're in zone 1. Okay, mark there, zone 1. So let's press the hash key. Okay, not the hash key, sorry, let's press the star key. The star key. And we've now got zone 1 highlighted there. Okay. So that we're on 19 meters broadcast band AM mode, you can see in zone 1. Let's step up to the next zone. And the radio switches, takes a second. We're now in SSB, USB, upper sideband mode in 20 meters in zone 2. That's zone 2. Let's go to next zone. And we're in medium wave AM mode. Okay, you can see we're in 9 kilohertz steps, which is just a job for medium wave. Got a bandwidth of 4K. LNA and BFO settings are there as well. They'll be memorized. So that's zone 3. And go up to the last zone. So we're in long wave now. AM mode again. although I wanted a 9 kilohertz step here, it hasn't taken, and this is a problem I've had before. I don't know why. It's defaulted to 1. I can go in now and alter that. I can move down there and alter that. It doesn't really matter with long wave because there's not an awful lot to listen to on long wave. This radio is not really going to be used on long wave, so I'm not too bothered, but we can change that. It's just not keeping that setting in the zone. I'll go back round, should take us round to zone 1 again. So there it is, broadcast band, shortwave, 5 kilohertz steps, 4K bandwidth, and so on. So there's your zones, makes it a little bit easier. If we want to go back to the VHF, UHF side, just hit that, and we're back to 2 meters. Now, this side of the radio covers right down to about 30 meg, well, below 30 megs actually, about 18 megs I think. So therefore, if we want to monitor CB, we could go 27, 5, right, that's not going to work, is it? Okay, so, let's take that out. Let's go 0, 27, that's better, 5, 5, 5. And we could, theoretically, switch into AM and switch into SSB. I'm assuming this is upper sideband. We will find out. I don't know. But you can see if you're on 27 megs now on the VHF, UHF side, you've got the full range of modes you're going to need to monitor CB. You've got sideband, you've got FM, and you've got AM. So that's useful. It would be the same for 6 meters. So if you you could key in here 51 500, and again you've got FM, AM, and SSB. So there you go. That's the result of programming the Radtel on the receive side. I mean, programming your VHF, UHF channels is going to be pretty much like any other handheld. What do I think of the radio overall? Okay, let's move on to that. Right, I hope you found that useful. As you can see, the interface of this radio, certainly in my opinion, it's a bit clunky, okay? Using it as a receiver. It does work, but it's not the easiest to use. I think mainly because what we're lacking when we're using a radio like this on HF is a rotary control. So you're trying to do all of your frequency changes, mode changes, whatever, using the keypad. It isn't the easiest, but it's possible to do. Now, the radio works in terms of its receive capabilities. What I have been disappointed with slightly, maybe it wasn't a surprise, is its performance using a telescopic antenna. So if you're using this SMA connector here, and I've just had here it is here, just had a telescopic in there, and you know what, it works, but this little radio generates quite a bit of noise, okay, within itself. So when you're using the telescopic, although it's clear that the receiver is actually quite sensitive, there's quite a lot of noise generated here, so that does make reception difficult on some bands. That said, I've had surprising performance with this radio and a telescopic on medium wave band, the AM band.
You've got me instead. What a win for Wolves by the...
And I've done okay, you know, with some of the shortwave broadcast bands and a little bit of amateur SSB as well.
Roger, Yankee Lima 7 X-ray.
But the radio works a lot better if you can put an external antenna in here, and by that I mean, you know, if I use one of my coax fed antennas, I've got a few demos of it with my Wellbrook loop.
The National Recovery Committee, NRC, has approved the phased reopening of businesses along common highways from Oscar-Motors through Prague up to childcare, provided their buildings are certified as structurally.
Actually picking up Radio New Zealand with the Wellbrook loop and you know, various other frequencies, and the interference, you know, that internally generated interference isn't there. So it's a lot better to use with an external antenna. Now that probably shouldn't be a surprise, because at the end of the day, what's inside here is the SI4732 chip. The same as you will get if you buy one of those Quansheng HF modifying boards. Same chip in there. So I don't have the modded Quansheng. I've got a Quansheng here. I've modded the firmware, so it does 18 megahertz up on receive, SSB and all the rest of it, but I haven't got the HF board in this, so I can't do a direct comparison. I mean, this is a more lightweight radio. I suspect with the updated firmware, it's a little bit easier to use as well. If you've got one of these that's modded for HF, okay, you've got the HF board in, it really, I don't think this is going to offer you anything new, so I wouldn't bother. I mean, I didn't have one, so this came in just around 40 UK pounds, which for a dual band handy with that HF receive side, I don't think it's too bad. But we can't expect too much from one of these, because basically the HF side is one of these, just like the ATS20 Plus. That's an SI4732 boarded radio. This generates a lot less internal noise than this. So if you're using a whip, if you're intending to sort of use this as a portable radio indoors, it's not going to do that well indoors with a whip. No radio is really. But you're better off with one of these than with one of these, because this generates quite a bit of noise. This doesn't generate much noise at all on the whip. Okay. So that's just another thought. Overall, yeah, this seems to be a reasonably well constructed VHF UHF radio with the additional facility of the HF receive, which is usable, but it's not the best. It's a lot better on, as I said, coax fed external antenna. It will come into its own there. It's difficult to know you know, really quite what the market is. If I wanted a receiver, I'd have that. If I wanted a dual bander, then I just have any dual bander. VHF UHF handy will perform pretty much the same as this. But overall, a reasonable VHF UHF handy, a passable HF receiver, but tricky to use. But it is there. So you pays your money, as they say in the UK, and you takes your choice. It's up to you. One of these, or maybe a modded, you know, ready modded Quansheng, or a Quansheng, and if you're up to the soldering, you can fit the board, or, you know, get the cheapest Bayer thing, VHF UHF handheld, which probably do about the same as this does on VHF UHF, and with the leftovers, get an ATS20 Plus, because you get those about, you know, around the 20 UK pound mark now, and a lot easier to use on HF than that. Okay, thanks for watching.